If you were to walk outside right now, scoop up a handful of dirt from your garden and just hold it in your palm, what do you actually see?
Right. I mean, you just see soil.
Exactly. You see soil, maybe a stray pebble, a little dried organic matter. By every common definition, it is just dirt.
Yeah.
It's sort of the ultimate symbol of the mundane,
Hmm.
the forgotten. It's, the absolute end of the line. We even use it in our language as this metaphor for utter worthlessness, right?
Hmm.
Treating someone like dirt.
Well, yeah, because it represents the absolute baseline of physical existence. It is the stuff we instinctively wipe off our shoes before we walk into our homes.
Right.
It's the final destination of literally everything that breaks down in the natural world.
But imagine looking at that exact same handful of dirt through an entirely different lens. Like imagine that instead of seeing the end of the line, you're looking at a highly organized, temporarily paused, incredibly detailed cosmic ledger.
A ledger? That's a great word for it.
Yeah, meticulously tracked atomic inventory of iron, carbon, and calcium, just waiting for a wake-up call. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are going to look at the human body, mortality, and the very dirt beneath your feet in a completely radical way.
It is a wild perspective shift.
It really is. We are unpacking a fascinating document today called the Scroll of the Three Burials, and this acts as a textual synthesis of ancient scriptures, including passages from Ezekiel, Genesis, and Revelation, and it overlays them with the physical science of the human body.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be completely clear up front, we're dealing with some deeply held religious texts today.
We're talking ancient prophecies, theology, mechanics of resurrection.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't to take sides or validate or tell you what to believe.
Yeah.
We are simply acting as neutral guides. We just want to unpack the fascinating ways this source material blends spiritual concepts with physical science to fundamentally challenge our everyday perception of death.
And that challenge to our perception is really the core tension of the entire document. I mean, it takes the ultimate human fear, the fear of fading away, of decaying, of our physical matter just scattering into complete oblivion, and it reframes it entirely.
Reframes it how? Exactly.
Well, to human eyes, a decayed body simply vanishes, right?
Right.
It becomes permanently lost. But the text argues that to the creator, it is merely a temporary dispersal of elements.
Wow.
Yeah, it views the human body not just as fleeting flesh, but as a treasury of bones. Basically, nothing is ever truly lost. It is simply filed away in an atomic inventory.
Okay, we should start with the visual that the text uses to kick this whole conceptual framework off, because it is incredibly striking.
Oh, absolutely. The valley.
Yes. We are taken into this visceral, almost cinematic imagery of the ancient book of Ezekiel, specifically chapter 77. The prophet is brought by the Spirit into the middle of a valley. And this valley is absolutely filled with bones.
And the text emphasizes that these aren't just, recent casualties of a battle.
Like they're ancient.
Exactly. These bones are ancient. They're completely sun-bleached, scattered across the landscape, and entirely forgotten by the memory of men.
The flesh is gone. The breath is gone.
Their names are gone. It is a portrait of total, irreversible finality.
Yeah.
By every human metric, the story of these people is over. The natural recycling process has run its course, and what remains is, it's barely distinguishable from the rocks in the valley.
Then the Creator asks the prophet a question that, as the text points out, confounds the wisdom of the world. The Creator points to this sun-baked, chaotic boneyard and asks, can these bones live?
And the prophet gives a very diplomatic, almost hesitant answer, basically saying, only you know.
Right, like I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to say no.
Exactly. And then the command is given to prophesy to the dust. The prophet speaks, and suddenly there is a noise, a rattling across the valley, and the bones actually start coming together, bone to bone.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the ancient authors of Ezekiel obviously weren't writing about the periodic table.
No, definitely not.
But this modern synthesis, the Scroll of the Three Burials, takes that ancient scripture and interprets it through the lens of modern biology. It specifically details how the calcium of the bones gathers together from the dust. It describes the iron of the blood returning from the soil, the carbon of the flesh reassembling atom by atom. It uses the literal elemental building blocks of human biology to explain the mechanics of this ancient prophecy.
What's fascinating here is how this synthesis totally redefines the concept of what it means to be scattered.
How so?
Well, to humanity, a decayed body is chaos. It is carbon returning to the soil, iron leaching into the groundwater. It is completely irretrievable. But the text argues that to the Creator, it is simply his creation awaiting orders.
Just waiting.
Yeah. The text says nothing formed by his hand is lost to him. The environment is just holding the pieces in trust.
It makes me think of a massively complex Lego set.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Imagine a master builder who designs an incredible 10,000-piece structure. They build it, and it's perfect. But over time, the set gets dropped. The pieces shatter. Over the years, they get kicked under the sofa, swept into the garden, buried in the yard.
Just completely scattered.
Exactly. To anyone visiting the house, that Lego set is destroyed. It's gone. But if the original builder possesses a perfect, flawless ledger in their mind of every single brick and knows exactly where under the sofa or deep in the garden each individual piece currently resides, the set isn't destroyed at all.
It's merely dismantled.
Yes. The builder still owns every single brick and knows precisely how to snap them back together the moment they decide to rebuild.
That captures the text argument perfectly.
Yeah.
The calcium, the iron, the carbon, they're just the atomic Lego bricks. And the text claims the builder has an absolute perfect inventory of their locations.
Right.
But, and this is a big but, that perfect physical reassembly introduces an immediate massive problem in the text's narrative. Simply snapping the bricks back together does not equal life.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is the crucial turning point of the philosophy of the text.
Yeah.
The bones rattle together in the valley. The text says the sinews and flesh come upon them and the skin covers them. The builder has perfectly reassembled the physical pieces. The calcium and carbon are flawlessly aligned. But Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 8, points out a glaring issue.
There was no breath in them.
Exactly. There was no breath in them. The Lego set is fully built, but it's completely inert.
Because the text insists that physical matter alone, no matter how perfectly organized or biologically sound, is entirely insufficient for life.
Mm-hmm.
The source roots this firmly in the ancient creation account of Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, which states that man was formed out of the dust from the ground, but only became a living being when the Creator breathed into his nostrils the breath of life.
So it's two parts.
Right. The text defines humanity strictly as a combination of two distinct elements, dust and breath.
Dust and breath. The tangible and the intangible. If we put it in modern terms, it's the ultimate hardware and software distinction.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The calcium, the iron, the carbon, that is the hardware.
Mm.
You can build the most advanced, perfectly constructed supercomputer on the planet. Every wire can be in place. But if you don't have an operating system, if you don't have the electricity running through the motherboard, you just have a very expensive, very heavy paperweight.
A biological paperweight.
Right. And the text says the prophet literally has to command the breath to come from the four winds to animate this rebuilt army of hardware.
And this dual nature is the absolute key to understanding the text's mystery of resurrection. At the moment of death, the hardware and the software simply separate. They decouple.
They just go their separate ways.
Exactly. The dust returns to the earth to be scattered, and the breath returns to Elohim. At the resurrection, both are called back together from their respective holding places.
Wait, let's stop right there. If this divine software is all that truly matters for animation and life, doesn't that render our entire modern health culture completely pointless?
That's a provocative question.
Well, I mean, we are a society obsessed with optimizing our hardware, right? We track our macros, we take our daily vitamins, we do cold plunges and red light therapy.
Guilty as charged.
Right. We are desperately trying to keep the calcium and carbon in peak condition. Is this text implying that our intense obsession with the physical body is ultimately missing the entire point of existence?
That is precisely the philosophical critique the text is making.
Really?
Yeah, the underlying value system of these ancient scriptures is that true life is not merely biological function. A heartbeat and brain waves, in the purely physical sense, are just moving parts without the divine breath.
Just moving parts. Wow.
The text asserts that the spirit, the breath, the knowledge of the Creator, that is the true essence of humanity. The physical vessel is obviously necessary for this current existence, but it is ultimately temporary, highly fragile, and entirely subordinate to the breath.
So, if the breath has left, and the physical body is merely an empty piece of hardware destined to return to the earth until this final cosmic recall, it creates an immediate practical problem for the people left behind.
What to do with the body?
Exactly. What do we do with the empty hardware? And the text argues that how a culture disposes of these bodies actually reveals their deepest spiritual beliefs.
Which leads directly into the core of the scroll of the three burials. It provides this fascinating breakdown of the three testimonies of death.
Right, let's get into those.
So each of these three burials, according to the text, serves as a distinct witness to the living about how humanity grapples with mortality. The first testimony is what the text calls the burial of the earth, or the return to dust.
Okay.
This is described as the quiet law of creation. It pulls directly from the judgment in Genesis 3:19. For dust you are, and to dust you return.
And again, the synthesis maps modern science right onto this ancient law. It talks about the literal carbon cycle. It describes how microbes dissolve the body, how the atoms scatter into the surrounding environment.
Carbon returning to the breath of the world.
Yeah, water evaporating to join the clouds, minerals leaching back into the topsoil. It's the ultimate frictionless recycling program. The body simply becomes food for the earth again, seamlessly rejoining the ecosystem.
It is the natural, intended order in the wake of mortality. The earth receives the physical body, but Elohim keeps the life.
But people don't usually like that, do they?
No, humanity historically is deeply uncomfortable with yielding to that natural order and watching their loved ones dissolve into the dirt. Which brings us to the second testimony, the burial of preservation.
Yeah.
The text calls this the coffin of the nations and associates it specifically with the way of Mitzrayim or ancient Egypt.
This is where the text brings in the story of the patriarch Joseph from Genesis chapter 50. Joseph commands his physicians to embalm his father, a meticulous process that takes 40 days. They fill the veins with chemical preservatives, they wrap the flesh, they seal the body in a heavy box of stone or metal. And the text acknowledges that on a purely physical level, this actually works for a season.
Right, the chemicals bind the proteins, the bacteria are silenced, and the natural process of decay is artificially delayed.
But is the text presenting embalming, like what Joseph did for his father for 40 days, as a direct rebellion against the Creator? Or is it just acknowledging a historical reality, a grieving process that ultimately doesn't matter because you can't trick the cosmic ledger anyway?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text uses the embalming practices of ancient Egypt as the ultimate metaphor for human arrogance.
Oh, so it is a critique.
Yes. The source explicitly warns that this preservation is a grand illusion. It says, what man preserves, time still consumes. The coffin of the nations is an attempt to artificially freeze the hardware, to preserve the flesh that was always meant to return to dust under the quiet law of creation.
So it's fighting the natural order.
Exactly. The text leans heavily into interpreting it as a profound moral warning. It contrasts the futility of dedicating massive resources to preserving the flesh against the absolute necessity of preserving the spirit.
Which you can't put in a box.
Right. It argues that a perfectly embalmed body in a solid gold sarcophagus cannot save a corrupt soul. It references the fire of Gehenna from the books of Matthew and Mark, warning that the safest, most sealed coffin in the earth cannot protect a corrupt heart from spiritual judgment. As the text eloquently summarizes the Egyptian mindset. The nations preserve bodies, but Yahuah judges spirits.
So the ultimate fate of the hardware doesn't change the fate of the software.
No.
Which sets up the third and final testimony of death perfectly. The burial of fire, or cremation.
Right.
The text points out the stark, violent contrast in time, where the earth takes years to dissolve a body and preservation tries to stretch it to millennia. The flame consumes the hardware in moments. The flesh becomes vapor.
Instantly.
The carbon instantly rises into the sky, the water evaporates, and only the mineral bones remain to be crushed into dust.
But just like the other burials, the physical act of cremation points to a much deeper spiritual mystery. The intense fire of cremation is presented as a physical witness to the prophecy of the second death.
The second death.
Yeah, the text references the book of Revelation and the Gospel of Mark, speaking of a purifying, consuming fire. The first death takes the physical body, whether it is slowly dissolved by the earth, temporarily paused by preservation, or rapidly vaporized by fire.
Right.
But the second death permanently consumes the rebellious spirit. The physical fire is a stark reminder of the spiritual fire.
Okay. So whether your hardware is slowly recycled by microbes in a forest, temporarily paused by heavy embalming chemicals in a stone tomb, or rapidly vaporized in a 1500-degree furnace, the ultimate destination of the atoms is exactly the same.
They're scattered.
They are scattered. The Lego pieces are thrown across the universe. How does the text resolve this immense logistical nightmare? Like, how does the builder actually pull them back together when the pieces are literally dissolved into the ocean or floating in the atmosphere?
This brings us to the concept of the final call and the magnificent title given to the creator in this synthesis, the treasure of the
The
bones.
treasure of the bones, that's a great title.
It is. The source pulls from the prophetic book of Daniel, chapter 12, the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, and Revelation 20, to assert that the grave is merely the planting of a seed. The physical body is sown into the earth exactly like grain is sown into the soil.
I love that shift in perspective. The text uses the phrase sown in corruption, raised in incorruption. It completely rewires the concept of a graveyard. It stops being a disposal site for broken hardware and becomes a field waiting for a harvest.
Precisely. And the text asserts that no grave, no matter how deep or scattered, can hide from the voice of Elohim. Revelation 20 declares the sea gave up the dead, death and Sheol gave up the dead.
The earth returns its buried elements.
The fire returns its scattered ashes. And this concept of a treasury is proven metaphorically in the text by the story of Moses. In Exodus chapter 13, Moses takes the bones of Joseph out of Egypt during the Exodus.
Right, hundreds of years later.
Exactly. The flesh has long since decayed, but the bones are carefully carried out as a promise. The text calls the bones the final treasury of the body.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? If we bring these sweeping, ancient philosophical concepts back down to reality, the text is arguing that the wind, the soil, and the sea literally remember the atomic makeup of every single person until the books of history are finally closed.
The very wind blowing outside your window remembers your carbon.
How are you supposed to process a concept that massive? I mean, is this meant to be a terrifying thought of ultimate, inescapable accountability? Or is it a deeply comforting promise that no matter how chaotic the world gets, we are never truly lost?
This raises an important question, and the text answers it directly with its final declaration. It says, "O sons of Adam, do not fear the burial of the body. Fear instead the death of the spirit."
So it's about comfort.
It is. The text desperately wants the reader to find immense comfort in the physical scattering. It is telling you that the universe is not a cold, chaotic void where your existence will be permanently erased and forgotten.
It's a meticulously managed legend.
The one who formed the carbon and iron atoms in the first place needs only a single word, rise, to call them back. The accountability is reserved for the spirit, but the restoration of the physical form is presented as an absolute, unbreakable promise from the builder.
It really is a profound piece of almost scientific poetry. It takes the terrifying reality of our own mortality, the inevitable, messy decay of our physical form, and entirely strips away the fear of it. It presents the universe not as a random scattering of meaningless matter, but as a perfect, flawless ledger. No carbon atom, no iron atom is ever misplaced. It seamlessly blends the ancient, majestic language of scriptural prophecy with the literal elemental realities of the physical world we inhabit every single day.
And for you, the listener, it offers a profound challenge. We live in a modern world that is heavily obsessed with preserving youth, fighting off physical decline, and treating the physical body as the ultimate measure of our existence.
Right, the hardware obsession.
Exactly. This text asks you to evaluate your priorities. It challenges you to consider what you actually value more: the temporary, recyclable vessel of atoms that you currently pilot, or the enduring, invisible breath of life that animates it.
Wow.
The vessel will inevitably return to the earth no matter how many vitamins you take, but the breath is what carries your true essence.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to explore on your own as you go about the rest of your day. We've established the text's view that the earth, the sea, and the wind act as a perfect cosmic atomic inventory.
Holding them in trust for the final call.
Exactly. They remember every single carbon and iron atom that makes up your body right now. But if that meticulous ledger stretches forward into eternity, it also stretches backward.
Oh, that's interesting.
If the atoms making up your hands, your heart, and your bones right now are merely on loan from the earth, where have those atoms been in the thousands of years before they became you? What ancient forgotten stories, what vanished empires, or what prehistoric forests are already written into the very dust of your own bones? Something to chew on the next time you look at a handful of dirt. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.